And welcome back to the Dave LewAllen Podcast. We cover sports stories, newsmakers, and difference makers in our communities and across the state of Michigan. So pleased that you're joining us today for the conversation with longtime Detroit Free Press prep sports writer Mick McCabe, who has stepped away finally,
this time for real.
After 55 years of working at the Free Press, made that decision. He is the son of Swami,
Yes.
the great seer, the all-knowing one
Very
in
much
high
so.
school sports in the state of Michigan. Longtime friend as well. Great to have you here.
Acquaintance might be a better
Okay,
word. Yeah,
all right.
You know how that goes.
We've been around for
Yeah,
a while.
right, uh-huh.
Yeah, like decades.
Yes.
But it's great to have you here. Thanks for the time. The reflections of a career we have both seen in our respective industries. Tremendous change
Unbelievable.
driven by technology and damaging to journalism in so many levels. But as you immediately step away, reflections on a career, how blessed you've been, I guess, to have that kind of run at the Free Press, doing something that clearly you love.
Yeah, I never really thought about it too much because there was always something else to do. Mm-hmm. So you never sit back and say, oh, it's been a great run, whatever. No, there was always another assignment.
Right.
And like this July, I don't do much I never did much in July. Mm-hmm. But then I would get going the last week of July, and then it's nonstop until the middle of December. So it's going to be real interesting to see what happens now at the end of August and football starting up, and whether I can lose my mind altogether, which is a distinct possibility.
Well, some have argued that for years that you'd already lost your mind.
Yeah, there wasn't much there to begin with, that's for
well,
sure.
there's time for naps now and good stuff like that,
Always take a nap. I remember talking to Lloyd Carr and about naps, and he goes, yeah, I'm taking them now. He goes, we used to make fun of Bo all the time because he would close his door and take a nap on the couch for 20 minutes. He goes, now that I'm there, I like naps a lot. And so, me too.
Yeah. All right, so 2016, you retired from full-time work at the Free Press. That didn't last long, in part, and I predicted it at the time, once you retired, the prep sports coverage, at the Free Press would basically disappear, which was the case. Anyway, they brought you back on a freelance basis, and you did that then through June when you announced fully that you were done.
Yeah, I really wasn't ready mentally to retire in 16, but I made a terrible mistake. They had a big staff meeting, and they said, we're going to have more cuts. Because we had lost 20-some people like the year before, and we said, okay, great, we're going to be okay for a few years. Well, they said, we're going to take 18 people, and we're going to offer voluntary layoffs, and but if we don't get enough, we're going to cut people. And I see all these young people crying, and in 16 it had been, 46 years or something. I go, yeah, that's long enough, maybe I should get out, but I wasn't really ready to.
But you took a buyout in part to save a job for somebody else.
Which I knew whose job I was saving.
Yeah.
And she had been my editor earlier in her career, and we were really good friends. And I said, she needs this a lot more than I do. So I took the buyout, and then I just shook my head at, oh, my God, are you serious? What are they doing here? And then Chris Thomas became sports editor. Wasn't even 30 yet. And he had come from Tennessee. And he called, I saw him at the Hall of Fame induction and said, would you ever consider coming back? And I said, yeah, I guess. He goes, on a part-time basis. I said, okay. And we talked, and he said, yeah, why don't you do it? And it was, really good for me. I needed something to do. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'd seen every Law and Order. There wasn't a whole lot left out there. I mean, God.
Yeah.
So we came back and maybe wrote a little bit And then they went to a paywall.
Yeah.
And Chris calls, and I mean, I always knew he was a smart kid. I didn't know he was this smart. But he says, everything you write, we're putting behind a paywall. And I said, why? And I said, it's just high school stuff. He goes, yeah, but it's original content. They can't go to ESPN.com and get this. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay. So he calls me back in 2 weeks. He goes, I'm not saying you should ask for a raise, but I just got off the phone with Dave Burkett, who covers Lions, and is tremendous, and had to tell him that he's getting his butt beat by a retired old man. I said, really? Okay. So
in
then
terms of page views and interest
subscriptions.
Yeah.
Subscriptions. So then he calls me back like 6 weeks later, and Chris says, I'm not saying you should ask for a raise, but not only did you lead the Free Press in subscriptions sold, you led all of Gannett. Wow. He goes, they were having meetings about you at headquarters. And the bottom line was, okay, the solution is make him come back full-time, which wasn't going to happen. But what it said, too, was there's an interest in high school sports out there. Yeah. And that's something that we did that nobody else really did. And, I mean, the stuff was sold a lot of subscriptions.
All right, we're going to talk about best players that you've covered and teams and, you know, the incredible names of athletes that have been produced in the state of Michigan. But how about paying a little bit of homage to Hal Schram?
Oh, absolutely.
And the guy who really started what you then took to other levels in terms of coverage and the importance placed on high school athletes and sports in the state of Michigan.
Hal Schram was the greatest. And, you know, he went to high school at the Michigan School for the Blind. Yeah. And then he went to Michigan State, and he borrowed some money from the dean up there and took a train to Baltimore, to Johns Hopkins, because his eyes were terrible. I mean, so he sat there for 3 days until they saw him. And they said, well, we think we can help you out. But the other side of the coin is you could lose what little sight you have. So he called home. His mom says, forget it, come on home. His dad says, do what you have to do. So he underwent a series of operations. And when they finally took the bandages off, he looked across the room and he saw mortar between the bricks. He had never seen mortar before. So his eyesight was never great, but it was good enough to drive and do all that. And he came to the Free Press, and you know, he did the rankings. He did a point system, which is kind of similar to the way MHSAA does points for the football teams, stuff like that. And he was obviously ahead of his time with the all-state teams and his predictions, because he was the Swami. And I found a reference to him being the Swami in 1959.
Really?
Yeah. And so, and he covered the state. And that's one thing that he impressed on me, beat it into my head, that the Free Press was this newspaper for the state of Michigan. Because I used to do a small college football tour where I'd go to every Division II school in the state. 1 year I even went to the teams in the Upper Peninsula. And he says, as you're driving down these back roads, look, you may see a box for the Grand Rapids Press, but there's also something for the Detroit Free Press. Oh. And in Saginaw, the Saginaw News, and then one for the Free Press. That they got the Free Press plus their local one. And so that was very important to me, and that's why we continue to emphasize, Muskegon and Traverse City and all over the state of Michigan.
Thus the son of Swami, following right. Hal Schram. And you walked into the Free Press Sports Department June 3rd, 1970.
Yeah.
How old were you? And, I mean, you weren't writing prep sports at that moment.
No, I was 20, close to turning 21. And I started as a copy boy. And what we did, we filled glue pots, and we sharpened pencils, and we kept track of all the racing, the out-of-town tracks. And which just ate up a lot of space. And I'll never forget them. Once I got a call, and he goes, "This is John S. Knight, who was the Knight of
Knight Ritter
before there was even a Ritter."
Yeah.
Yeah. And he goes, "I notice you only have 2 tracks in the paper." Says, "Yeah. You're supposed to have 3, and these are 3 you're going to do." And because he was a real horse guy. And so we kept track of those, and then we would do Old Rosebud. We type up, for DRC and Hazel Park, when they had the thoroughbreds, there'd be a consensus for Al Speed, which is Al Kaufman, the Associated Press, Old Rosebud, a racing form.
Who was going to win?
Right, every race. Well, we had to be Old Rosebud, or else Charlie Buck, who was another character who was an editor, copy editor at the Free Press, Norbert Shiwa, and his alias was Charlie Buck, and we would pick those, and then we'd add them up, and we'd have the consensus. We did all sorts of stuff. We'd get the box scores off of the AP wire and make sure that we got all that stuff in, and then they gave me a chance to a tryout for 6 months, and it worked out.
Yeah, I'll say worked out. 55 years later, here we are talking about it. The opportunity to kind of work with Schram, though, and kind of move into the prep sports coverage. How did that develop?
Well, they just said, "Well, help Swami, just help him out with games and stuff," because Hal's site was not good,
right? And
so I would go out and cover games, and then do other stories. But I also did other stuff too. Like we first met, Michigan football.
Right.
I covered Michigan football for a couple of years, and I always did college basketball. I started, and even with football, started with the MIAA in the Great Lakes, and I did the MAC, and then I did Michigan football. I did Michigan State basketball for a lot of years, and then I was doing MAC basketball, the men, and I said, I remember I was with Western Michigan, and they won the MAC, and they got clobbered. I think they played Vanderbilt in the first round, and if they won that game, they were going to have to play North Carolina State. I said, these guys are never really going to go anywhere. I said, Joanne McCallie has something going on at Michigan State. I think we should cover more women's college basketball. And so we did. Michigan wasn't very good then. Obviously, they've changed a lot. But Joanne took them to the championship game in 2005. And then Susie Merchant took over when Joanne left for Duke, and she kept that thing rolling. And so we kind of started everything with women's athletes. This whole thing you're seeing now, we started that a long time ago. I was at one of our guys, his daughter went to Bishop Gallagher and then Regina, and they were playing in the consolation game for Operation Friendship. And so I went to see her play. And then Mercy was playing Cass Tech girls for the championship. And I talked them into letting me cover that game. And so at the end of the game, Mercy was winning and clearly was going to win. And the Cass Tech student section starts chanting, "Hey, Mercy, you're hot, but who's going to win it in the parking lot?" I said, holy cow. I mean, it was, the atmosphere was as good as any boys game I'd done.
Yeah.
And I said, this is a whole new audience that no one has ever appealed to. So I went back and said, we really should put an emphasis on this. Twice a week they were playing Tuesday, Thursday, which was great during the fall.
Right.
And it was, people don't realize how great that was. They realize it now, because it's not nowhere near as popular as it was back when we played in the fall.
They switched basketball and volleyball at that time seasons. So, now there's competition with boys basketball during the high school season.
Right, and there's nobody knows when anybody's playing anymore. There's no definite dates, no Tuesday, Thursday, no Tuesday, Friday. It's really a mess.
Mick McCabe, longtime prep sports writer for the Detroit Free Press, joining me today on the Dave LewAllen Podcast, talking about reflections on a career and about people that he has covered, that he's enjoyed. Of few enemies maybe that he's made along the way?
Me? Seriously, me?
Yeah, you.
Oh,
you.
my God.
But a little bit more on the girls' high school sports and the coverage the platform that you gave them. My daughter was a high school basketball player. So I cared about it through her as well, but you cared about it. And look how many lives have been touched because the girls also received the kind of coverage that was previously reserved for the boys.
Yes.
And how many more families have been touched as a result of that?
Yeah, there were a lot of touching, but no felony indictments whatsoever.
At least that we're aware of.
Here and there. What I also realized with that first game, these girls, their parents, they wanted to read their sons' names in the paper. Why wouldn't they want to read their daughters' names? Right. And there was a girl, Karen Kluk, who was a scorekeeper at Mercy. She called up and canceled the news and subscribed to the Free Press, unbeknownst to her parents, just because we were covering girls' athletics. Yeah. And it was, it took up a lot of space, of course, but it was well worth it. And it was neat getting to cover those girls and then watching them in college and now in the WNBA.
Yeah, that's right. Come a long way. I always enjoyed the Free Press growing up because of the design.
Yeah.
I loved the design of the Free Press versus, the news or many other papers that I would see. My grandparents would travel and they'd bring me, because I love newspapers, they'd bring them papers from every city that they ever went to, and I'd pore over them. But I always loved the design, especially back in the day of the Free Press. But when you were, really pumping out the content, to see multi-pages of, I think it was on Thursdays, of prep sports, the girls and the boys and the rankings and you must have been so proud of leading that and seeing that fulfilled in that way, because not everybody did that.
No,
nobody else did that.
Nobody else did it. And Prep Extras started, they were every Thursday, and then they moved it to Friday. And the rankings we had, they were when Swami did it, they were Tuesday, and Dave Robinson, when he became sports editor, came up and said, I got an idea. You're going to absolutely hate it. And then in about 6 months, you're going to really like it. We're going to move our rankings to Monday, because nobody did it on Monday. The news did it on Tuesday. Associated Press came on Tuesday. But Preps Extra was just tremendous. And the thing was, Christy Innes and Shelley Solon and David Darby, but above them, Gene Myers. He was our first prep coordinator. They designated him, and he ended up being the sports editor.
Right.
And I think I couldn't figure out why he wanted to be prep coordinator. I guess he figured that, well, if I can straighten his butt out, then I can do anything. And they made him sports editor, and he was a terrific sports editor. But they cared about it too. If they wouldn't have cared about it, it would have been disastrous. And they were completely bought in on this.
So over the years, the many years, the 5 decades of working at the Free Press, and for most of that time covering prep sports, you've got a book that is out. By the way, Michigan Sports Writer of the Year in your last year for the 3rd time, Michigan Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame, Michigan Sports Hall of Fame as well. Great honors. Your book, hardcover, which is terrific, by the way, came out a number of years ago. Golden Yearbook, 50 great years of Michigan's best high school players, teams, and memories. That book's still available.
Yeah.
It's great. We're going to talk about some of what's in that book, but some of your recollections, especially before you lose your mind completely.
Yeah, it's coming quick. I'm definitely losing it, no doubt about it.
Michigan has produced so many great athletes over the years, high school athletes, become on to college, become stars, onto the pro sports and become, stars and superstars as well. I'll ask you to name the best of all time in your estimation, but give me 5 from any era, from any sport that you think have made such an impact for themselves, their families, and their sports and their careers?
Well, Irvin Johnson, greatest high school basketball player here. This is before Fred Stabley Jr. nicknamed him Magic, but it didn't take off till he got to Michigan State. But he was a great, and I think a case could be made for Irvin being the greatest basketball player of all time because he changed the game. Yeah. And I know this is heresy. I don't think Gordie Howe's the greatest hockey player ever. I think Bobby Orr was because he changed the game too. And Irvin changed it. I mean, back when we were kids, 6'9" kids, they
couldn't handle the ball.
Inside.
They couldn't dribble the ball.
Right. But he would grab a defensive rebound, and in 3 dribbles, he's past half court. Yeah. And he was just phenomenal. And just a wonderful kid. Just really a great, great kid. Grew up in the 70s. He went to Lansing Everett because of busing. And so he would go to Everett and then leave and go to Sexton where his buddies were in school. And his dad finally said, you have to go to Everett and stay there. Well, there was a lot of racial unrest in that era, but nothing at Everett. And a teacher told me she was convinced that it was because of Irvin, that he wouldn't permit that. And when Jamie Huffman transferred, a white kid transferred into Everett the summer before their senior year, Irvin picked him up every day in the car and took him with him wherever he was going to play ball because he knew if we're going to win a state championship, I need help, and Jamie Huffman's going to be the help. And he was just a wonderful kid.
Yeah. George Fox, the coach?
Yeah, the late George Fox. Yeah. Really, really good. They lost one game, and he took the blame. They sold out Jennison Fieldhouse when they played Lansing Everett. And he says, it was my fault. I put Irvin in the post, a high post. Never do that again. He has to be out on a wing. And they never lost again. So, yeah.
All right. Who else?
Derek Jeter. So I went to see him play and drove up to Kalamazoo. They were playing at Loy Norrick's. And I'm sitting there, and I'm saying, this is the best high school baseball player in the country? I mean, he's just, I expect something different. Now, he had a bad ankle all season, so he wasn't running that well. But there were some ground balls hit to him. And he threw it. The power and the force he had thrown it to first base was, holy cow, are you kidding me? And it was a terrific fielder. And he hit well, too, really well. And he struck out once. And it was a called third. And after the game, the umpire said, I think I blew that call. And he was tremendous. So I followed them from the school bus from Loy Norrick's back to Central. We sat on the back step of the school for 2 hours talking. And the original contract he signed with the Yankees wasn't the first contract he signed. His parents made him sign a contract, he and his sister, every year before school began about the grades he was going to get. And if he didn't get those grades, he wasn't playing ball. And he was also a very good basketball player. I mean, I don't think he could have played at the Big Ten level, but he definitely would have been a MAC basketball player. And what a class act he always was.
And in those days, too, I mean, baseball prospects, I mean, the attention level, I mean, it wasn't like it is today, right? Mm-hmm. Where there's all these scouting services and all this publicity and, I mean, but over the top. So, he wound up being that high draft pick and all the rest of it. But, if you'd asked the common sports fan back in the day,
no, they didn't know him.
They wouldn't have known who he was.
They had, and ESPN wasn't covering the draft or anything. So he had relatives in New York, and every summer he would go back to New York for a couple of weeks, and he would always attend the Yankees games. They were his favorite team. So I called his mom that day of the draft to tell her that he got drafted by the Yankees, and she was just over the moon. Wow. For sure.
Yeah. All right, who else?
Tyrone Wheatley.
Yeah.
He played at Dearborn Heights Robichaud. And I remember going to practice and then going home with him because I was going to do a preseason story on him. And so he lived with his aunt and uncle and his siblings in this really small house. And we got there. He goes, "I'll be with you in a couple minutes," because he had to do the dishes because that was his job. And he wasn't putting on a show. Yeah. He had to do the dishes. He had to take out the trash and stuff like that. And I remember thinking, his dad had been murdered, a drug thing. His mom was also into drugs. And I'm thinking, if there's a kid who could go either way, this was him. Mm-hmm. But I had a really good feeling he was going to turn out to be okay, better than okay. Yeah. And he was, and he is. He's an amazing young man. And I remember Bob York was a football coach, and he says, "I'm moving him to tailback, from tailback to quarterback." I said, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, this is before the season." I said, "Why would you do that?" He goes, "Well, I want the ball in his hands on every single play." I said, "Okay." Well, I covered a game that they lost, and that was it. Then next game he was back at running back. And so before the state championship, I did a story, and I said, how did you figure you should move him back to tailback? He goes, "Well, it was at that game that we lost. The next day, the story said that at halftime, I made a great adjustment and moved him back to tailback, and they almost pulled out the game." And he goes, "I'm thinking that was a great adjustment. I'm going to leave him there." I'm like, okay, yeah.
He was like a man among boys.
He was.
I mean, in terms of his physical gifts.
Yes.
I mean, so fast.
Yes.
So powerful. Mm-hmm. I mean, just an incredible athlete.
Yeah, I mean, he almost won the state championship by himself by winning 4 events, all by himself in Class B. But people don't realize he could play basketball. And I know an official who was refereeing one of their games, and he took off like a step inside the lane and just jumped and just dunked it. And the official said the whistle dropped out of his mouth because he never seen anything like that. Yeah. But he was, he could have been an All-American track, who knows, maybe an Olympian in track because he was that powerful and that good.
Anybody else comes to mind?
Jim Pachork.
Yeah.
You would remember him, but not a lot of people know.
Orchard Lake
St. Mary's led them to the football state championship. Art Patty was the coach, and they did the hide the salami thing, and he was great at that. And then he also was led them to the basketball state championship, but his best sport was baseball. And he went on to Michigan and was an All-American, but he signed for football as a quarterback. And with who they had there, that wasn't going to work out. So he moved him to tight end. And he finally just gave up on it. But he would have been in the NFL if he would have stayed. Because there was a kid from Utah, and Sports Illustrated did a story on him, Bruce Hardy, and about the All-American boy and how he just sounded just like Pachork. And he ended up tight end with them, but he was a quarterback in high school. Yeah. Tight end with the Miami Dolphins, and that was Pachork. Chip Hilton was a character in a book.
Yeah, I got I got a bunch of the books.
Yeah, I don't have any of them, but I read them all.
Yeah.
And that was him. If they were picking anybody, it would have been Pachork, who then went and played, Major League Baseball for a while, then played in Japan for a long time.
Yeah, his brother Tom, older brother Tom Pachork, right, was in the majors too.
Yep, and his older brother Mike has the Major League record for batting average. Huh. He batted 1,000.
Wow.
Last game of the year with Houston, he played and was 3 for 3. In the offseason, hurt his back and never played again.
Well, he experienced what Moonlight Graham never experienced.
Oh my gosh!
Never got that at bat, even though he had half inning or whatever.
Yeah, but he got 3 for 3.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. All right, I'm going to throw a name out: Mill Coleman.
Mill the Thrill.
Yeah.
If George Perlis had a brain, he would have been
the late great George Perlis.
Yes, he would have. Mill would have been Johnny Manziel before Johnny Manziel, because he was that kind of quarterback at Farmington Hills Harrison.
Oh, yeah. Incredible.
Just amazing. That's why he was on our dream team and the best quarterback I'd seen, including your boy, Drew Henson, who was tremendous.
Who we'll get to.
Yeah, he was tremendous. Mill was, and he played point guard, and he was a really good athlete. But as a quarterback, he did everything. Yeah, huge feet and big hands, and the only thing he needed was a growth spurt, and it never came.
But what a winner!
Yes, complete state championship, won a couple state championships, and their championship game against DeWitt was amazing. And DeWitt left way too much time on the clock, and there he goes.
Paid the price.
Yes.
All right, Drew Henson at Brighton, my alma mater. Incredible high school career.
Yeah.
He played basketball, but football and baseball in particular were his things. And the story, went to University of Michigan for football, but he holds still to this day so many national high school baseball records.
Yes.
He played for my coach, Mark Harrow, as well at Brighton. I just remember watching him and screaming a line drive to the gap and running the bases, legging out a double, and it was a sound that I'd never heard before. I mean, how powerful he was and how fast he was at just running from home to second. It's like it was just different, and his talent level was different.
Yeah, he was way ahead of his time and incredibly mature. And when he went to Michigan, there was a thing that they said Drew didn't want Lloyd to sign another quarterback that year. That's not true. The only thing he asked was, don't sign a quarterback the year before I get there. He didn't want to have to maybe sit behind. But he sat behind some guy named Tom Brady, and they alternated for a while. And one thing his dad, and I think his dad really messed him up, but his dad told me in Drew's senior year in high school, he goes, if Tom Brady beats out Drew next year, that means Tom Brady's going to be a pro. And he was.
Yeah,
a pro. But yeah, it was a back and forth, and I guess it's their media day. Everybody was all around Drew. And Tom stood there and was just fuming, just really upset. And it's like, just wait, guys. You're going to see. But he was, in basketball, he was 20-10 guy. He was a double-double. He was really good because before they came here, he was in Utah, and so he played AAU, and he played against super friends with Weber and Jalen Rose and those guys. So he played against. He would have been a Division I basketball player for sure. But baseball is just something. He said that there was nothing else he liked doing more in life than hitting a baseball.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he didn't hit it well enough when he got to the pro levels, and he got a taste of the majors, but it was a very short stay. And had he devoted all to baseball, who knows? Or if he devoted all to football, who knows? But still, among high school athletes in the state of Michigan, I mean, he was one of the great ones for sure.
Unquestionably. Yeah. And I think if he would have stuck it out at Michigan, he would have been a top 5 draft pick in the draft. Yeah. And everything could have been different. But he loved baseball, so here we go.
Best team you ever saw, any sport, what would you say?
Probably basketball at Flint Northwestern. Is that about?
Glenn Rice?
Yeah, Glenn Rice. Anthony Pendleton, my boy Andre Rison, Darryl Miller, and Mike Avery. They were the only team I could compare it to was the Detroit Pershing team with Spencer Haywood and Ralph Simpson, who both went on to great careers in the NBA. But that was probably the best basketball team I'd seen.
All right, so as you reflect back to, you met so many great people, established friendships with players, and those friendships extend, through college and their adult years as well. Coaches, referees, but you held people accountable.
Yeah.
You looked out for the best interests of high school athletes, young people, and you felt if someone wasn't playing by the rules or didn't have the kid's best interest at heart, you were not afraid to call them out, to name names.
Right.
And as a result, you got some people that probably don't think Mick McCabe is the greatest guy in the world, but that went with the territory, didn't it?
Sure, absolutely. And the most recent was the guy at Belleville, who's now at River Rouge, and he was cheating like crazy. And we did a story, and I did a feature on a kid from Detroit King, and I said, yeah, the coach told me that they thought you were going to Belleville. He goes, yeah, well, their coach called me and asked me to come to 7-on-7s, come to practices, and picked me up and drove me. And the MHSA ran with that. And, they investigated this guy and found that in previous years he had kids living with him. So they put him on probation and barred him from coaching high school for 2 years. And now the River Rouge superintendent hires him. I mean, what are we doing here? Mm-hmm. This is high school football.
Yeah.
And you're cheating and you're recruiting, and oh my goodness gracious.
But that's not the only example of what has happened over the years.
Yeah.
I mean, sadly, this has existed.
Yeah, and I just don't understand what your motivation is.
Right.
Do you think you're going to be the next offensive coordinator at Michigan?
Yeah.
I've gone, Rob Pord was doing that at Orchard Lake St. Mary's. Chris Farr was having illegal practices here at Waterford Mott. Perry Watson was stealing kids. I called up Ecorse High School to get the phone number of their new football coach. And the AD says, hey, when are you going to do a story about Perry Watson coming over here and stealing our kids? Because Southwestern was right close to Ecorse. And then, he had a kid from Port Huron, had a kid from Woodhaven. He was recruiting like crazy. And we exposed all that.
Yeah. You're guessing you don't exchange Christmas cards.
No, we don't. No, and then there was problems with the MHSAA too.
Yeah.
I think Jack Roberts was a very good administrator, but he really didn't like change at all. And we went back and forth and I understand why in the 60s they put a rule in, if you play in an all-star game, you lose your remaining eligibility, because the spring coaches didn't want their kid. They wanted them to be in the spring sports, not going off in some tournaments. Well, then there got to be so many all-star games, and kids weren't playing other sports. Those spring coaches changed their minds, and who cares if they go someplace? Well, the MHSA wasn't going to go for it, and we finally got them to allow kids. Like the Golston kid from Southeastern who went to Michigan State and was still in the NFL last year, he wanted to play basketball. And their coach, George Ward, wanted him to play basketball because he thought he would add toughness that they were missing. But no, he played in an all-star game, and the MHSA said no. And he also wanted to be on the swimming team because he liked to swim. Could you imagine that? And what a great kid he was, too.
Yeah.
But maybe the biggest thing was the rule that had never changed at all or never had an amendment to it was the age rule. Like if you turned 19
in high school,
after September 1st, you were done. If you turned 19 before September 1st, you were done. You couldn't play. Well, there was a kid, Eric Dampierre, up at Ishpeming High School, who had Down syndrome. Now, typically kids with Down syndrome don't begin school as early as everybody else. So they routinely turn 19 before their senior year. And this kid was the backup kicker. And he just wanted to be on the team. And so the dad went to the MHSAA trying to
make an appeal.
Yes. And they just, okay, don't worry. We're going to bring it up at our next, at these meetings around the state. And they would, they did bring it up. And they said, but who wants 19-year-olds playing? And so they just blew it up before it could get going. So we did stories. I did about Eric, and I remember he testified before the state's House Education Committee. And I remember the lead. You know, Down syndrome kids quite often are just wonderful kids who are just happy. And I remember the lead was he had them before hello. Yeah. Because he sat down with this great smile and just read something he had written about how he wanted to be on the team. And then the MHSAA, the last thing they wanted or needed was a state legislature taking over. So they said, well, we're going to let the people vote on it. And then afterwards, Jack Roberts said, the MHSAA office did a wonderful job putting in the executive rep council, getting people. No, that was disingenuous. They did not, they changed when they were afraid the state was going to take them over. And so they did change that rule. And I remember getting into a screaming match with Tom Rashid because we always had screaming. We didn't talk. We screamed at each other. He goes, well, just wait till some 19-year-old kid sends somebody into, next week. Yeah. It's all going to be on you. And I said, not going to be on me. It's not going to happen. It can't happen. That just isn't the way this is. And anyway, I got a picture for after Christmas from Eric's dad, and there was a picture of Eric on the sidelines of the state championship game. And the kid just had a great smile on his face, and the dad said, this is what you did. And
that's got to be pretty gratifying.
It was, because, that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah. All right, speaking of changes,
yes.
Let's end with...
I thought we were just getting going.
Well, we are pretty much, but people can only take so much of us.
I know, that's together.
That's
you
right.
kidding me?
That's right.
God.
Changes, high school athletics. We see it in college now. NIL. Bryce Underwood, leaving high school to go to Michigan, and you talk about the money in his pocket. I mean, that's one thing at the college level, but all that filters down.
Everything filters down.
So where do you think we are today? And do you have concerns about, prep sports going forward, even more than you did, as it related to age 19 or eligibility issues or cheating?
Yeah, very concerned because it only takes one guy. And it depends. I don't know how they're going to sustain this NIL at the next level. Yeah. Do people, are they just keep contributing money and millions of dollars for this to happen? I don't think it's going to be real popular at the high school level. It could be because, like I said, it only takes one guy with a bunch of money to spread it around. I'm concerned about it. And I think because of what kids see at the college level, they're going to want something too at the high school level, and that would be disastrous.
Yeah, I just hate, look, student athletes and professional grooming grounds and all the rest of it. I just hate having been an athlete at one time and being in locker rooms. Hate the idea that you're sitting next to a guy who's making all this money. Yeah. And you're not, and just those feelings and the additional dynamic or tension that might involve, and especially if that guy screws up or this guy doesn't, and you're getting paid. And it just seems like it could be a huge mess.
Oh, it will be. And that's what's happened at the college level with all these, and now because betting is such a big part of it, and the colleges are into it, just like the NBA and everybody else, and the threats and the way they're going after these kids. You miss a shot, it cost me money, and I would hate to see that get to the high school level.
I appreciate your friendship over all the years, and your work, and being an advocate, particularly for high school athletes. Some might, in the sports writing field, might have thought, well, high school sports, I could be covering the Tigers and the Wolverines, but it was always most important to you. And speaking as the father of a female high school athlete and college athlete back in the day, you are appreciated, you are respected because of fighting for and providing a platform for these kids who are working, committed, doing good things, and seeking, opportunities.
Yeah, thank you. It was important to me, and I mean, I figured out a long time ago. Well, you remember when we would cover Michigan football? They, you have lunch with Bo, and then they bring you over to their SID offices, and then they bring a couple kids, and boom, that's it. Yeah. It's the only access you had. Well, I had access to everybody in the state, and I ended up getting good stories because high school kids don't know you're supposed to lie to the media, and they would tell me stuff, and it worked out really well, and it was fun.
Yeah. I'll say 55 years worth of hard work and fun.
Yes.
So enjoy this next chapter if you can, without covering sports. But, you're always welcome here to come and we can talk and reminisce.
Yeah, that would be fun. That would be fun for sure.
All right, we'll have you back. Mick McCabe, the son of Swami, joining me today on the Dave LewAllen Podcast, retired officially for the second time on June the 3rd after 55 years of work at the Detroit Free Press. Honored to have him here today. Thanks again for your time and continued good luck and good health in this next chapter. He's got grandkids all over the country, so he's going to be busy.
For sure.
Yeah, so thank you, Mick, and thank you for joining us today, watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast platform. Subscribe, get notifications of when we come with other great guests. We appreciate you and the support for this podcast. Also, thanks to Josh Bowron, our producer-director, for his efforts as well. Until next time, stay safe, be kind.